I'm the head of grants at Africa No Filter. In my capacity as head of grants, I oversee our grant making and programming in Africa's creative industry and media sectors. And African No Filter, a bit of introduction. Some of you may not have heard about us, but African No Filter is a narrative change organization. We work primarily with storytellers, filmmakers, painters, musicians, and what have you. Storytellers and media professionals and media platforms. We support them, we empower them, and we invest in the storytelling ecosystem so that we can begin to push back on harmful and negative stereotypical narratives about Africa and within Africa. So in a nutshell, our work is to empower storytellers to shift narratives about Africa through their creative products. That's really what we do in a nutshell. And we are Pan-African. We cater to 54, 55 countries on the continent. And we so far have worked with over 230 storytellers and storytelling platforms on the continent. And we have disbursed well over $3.5 million US in support of this very mission. It's a good place to clap. Okay, so thank you. I mean, talking about shifting narratives about Africa, there are no better group of people to speak to than filmmakers. The filmmakers and storytellers, entrepreneurs in the film ecosystem are some of the most powerful people we have on the continent. Our film, our music, our culture is our soft power in Africa, right? And there are no better group of people to talk to when it comes to intentionally shaping narratives about the continent. At Africa No Filter, we are very much concerned about the way the rest of the world sees Africa and the way the rest of the world engages with Africa. And today I am surrounded by some of the most prolific filmmakers on the continent right now, and film entrepreneurs as well, those who are in the business of supporting filmmakers, amplifying what they do. And we want to use this opportunity to unpack some of the concerns around using film as a veritable channel to tell better stories about the continent of Africa. Right? And so to my immediate left is Ikia, needs no introduction, and James Omokwe needs no introduction as well, and then Inaya needs no introduction, and Ike Nebwe needs no introduction, and Michael Parish. They all need no introduction, but please put your hands together for their staff.
We're still looking for work. We need an introduction.
But thank you so much. I think I'm tempted to start my question in this way. To filmmakers, how do filmmakers approach filmmaking? Do they approach filmmaking purely as a business? Or do they approach filmmaking as a social tool? Or it could actually be both of them. But I think it would be good for us to start with that opener. And we can keep our answers quite brief. Because I would love that question to sort of go around, and then maybe we can have the opportunity of asking more specific questions. But because of your unique backgrounds and your peculiar experiences, it would be good to just hear from you how you think filmmakers approach film, or perhaps from your own experience, as a business or as a social tool, or both of them. Let's start with Michael Parish, and then we'll go in that order down to the Kia.
Okay, so I think a lot has changed over the years. I know that initially when people started making films in Africa, most people didn't see film as a business that could generate income and make commercial success. A lot of them were just passionate about making films and making impact and creating impression. Some of them for political reasons. They wanted to tell a story about the struggles of their people, but as you know, as time went on, the new generation filmmakers thought that it should be different, and people should start making commercial films that will also create a sustainable income for them. It's changed over the years. So these days, I think people look at both ways. They see films as a social product that can impact society, and also a film that could create some sustainable income for them to make other films.
Beautiful. Thank you. Ike?
Yeah, I don't think this mic is working. Thank you. So I think that to sort of approach that question, for me, I have to look at like the history of Nollywood, you know, because like Nollywood is the mainstay of the Nigerian film industry, right? And if you look at the history of Nollywood, Nollywood actually started more like a business. Like the business angle was very strong, you know, from the beginning of the story of Nollywood. And I think that that's why Nollywood has been able to grow the way it is growing, because of that aggressive business angle to it, you know. So I think that what is happening now is that we're at a place as an industry where we're realizing that, wait, this is actually an art form, you know, and it's almost like we've missed that part for a very long time. And I'm happy to look at the industry now and see that it's like making like a renaissance kind of, you know, like a return to the art of film. And now the beautiful thing is, because we already like built our muscles around the business, you know, so now that we're integrating the art, I really think that it's a beautiful thing to see.
Beautiful. Thanks. Beverly?
Thank you. Yeah. No, I definitely agree with everything I've heard so far. I feel like, as already mentioned, the industry has grown so much. You know, it was a business back in the day, but now it's like, you know, we're very passionate about social causes and bringing them to the forefront and trying to find ways to, you know, make them commercial as well, and, you know, make money from those films too. If I'm using myself as an example, when I started the journey of Skin, the documentary, like, it literally was a social cause. I had no intention of making money. I didn't think I would, but because of how far and wide the film went, I did manage to make money from it. So I feel like the best balance are definitely films and documentaries that are able to strike the balance of, making money from the project, as well as tapping into the social cause as well. I think those are like the most powerful projects in my opinion.
Thank you.
Sorry, forgive me, my voice has jabbered. I think that if you see it from the prism of film being a product, you're making something. For instance, this microphone. What's the purpose of the microphone, or what's the purpose of the product? Yes, for some people it's a social cause. For some other people, I want to entertain. But you've made a product, and that product is an art form. And if you ask the question to say, how do I take this art form and give it to people? Are people going to pay for this art form? So you need to look at it from one prism. It's a product that you're going to sell, and then you're going to make money off it either way. And while you're selling that product, what is that product doing to the person who is buying it? Is it teaching them a lesson? Is it telling them a story? Are they gaining from it? So it has to be that balance. It's business, you need to make money, and you can also, have it make an impact.
Beautiful.
Okay, I would agree with all the other panelists, and what I would say is finding the balance, as they said. But there are some people who would focus on a cause and stick to that cause, and some of them may not even approach it from a place of, I need to make money. For them, the currency they will get is getting the message out, and for them, that's fine. So it really depends on, is it cash money you're getting, or is it currency on the cause and what it can lead to? That's for some filmmakers. And there's some people who go in it purely for the business. And in those cases, I would say there has to be a marriage between the art and the business for it to be successful.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you very much. I think we can conclude that it's both. The two are valid objectives why filmmakers make films. To drive a social cause or to preach a message, and also the commercial viability of it. Because you've got to be making some commercial returns for it to reproduce itself, right? You can't, yeah, it has to reproduce itself. You can't stop after making one film, even if it's a message you want to preach, right? So my next question, and I would love, James, I would love your opinion on this. when it comes to filmmaking, or when it comes to producing content, whether it's for TV or for the cinemas, there's always an assumption that the platforms, whether it's the TV or the streamers, the platforms tell you what to do. This is what we want, and you have to do it, right? Because they have the money, they have the resources, and they have what some have termed the reward. They control the reward, and you just have to play by what their dictates are. My question really is, who determines what stories are told on the screen? Whether it's in TV or on the other platforms, who determines what stories are told?
Okay, so let me address this. Apparently, this was a conversation in the last panel. I think generally it's a collaborative journey, right? And as an artist or as a producer, there are certain rules and structures when it comes to business, and sometimes there is an imbalance on both sides. And I'll give you an example. So if the studio says to you, oh, we're giving you X amount to produce X, sometimes it also comes from a place of trust. If they've never worked with you before, they also want to control certain things because, as far as they're concerned, they are investing X amount of money into this project. If they've never worked with you before, they're not coming from a place of trust. Yes, they trust you to some degree because you're the available producer that is there, and maybe somebody has said, oh, this guy can do the job. But they also want to make sure that they're holding your hand in making sure that you're telling, that you have the best outcome for whatever it is that you're producing. So in some cases in the beginning, they would tell you, this is the kinds of stories we want to tell. Perfect example. I remember when I started doing work for MultiChoice or Africa Magic, and the first story workshop we had, which gave birth to the show at Choche, it was a conversation that they wanted to move away from telling glam shows and whatever, and they wanted to do more indigenous stuff. I didn't make that up, right? So what we did was, they brought people into a room and we created the story. So they didn't create the story from scratch. Like I said, collaborative, it's a collaborative journey. Now, throughout the process of that journey, they will have some inputs, and they would say, oh no, why doesn't the story go this way? And it's just a structural form of control. It's not because they have the money and they want you to do X, Y, Z. They probably have more skin in the business than you do in terms of what they want, what the audience is looking for, right? So I'm sorry, I guess I'll give you another example. I spoke to somebody years ago, and he said to me, I don't know if he's here, but I'll say it's not Bacha. He said to me, he said, oh, I want us to do superhero films, like people wearing tight pants and whatever, and I think the Nigerian audience will like it. But you don't have the data to determine what the Nigerian audience will like. So that the people who bring the money have the data and they're telling you this is what people want to watch. Not to say that those people can't change their mind tomorrow, but the point is, if I invest this money in this your superhero story and they fail, the problem is that you walk away and scratch your head, but I've lost money. So for the first time that I'm giving you this cash, here's how we can do it. Now, over time, as you've done more projects with them and as those projects have been successful and then you've earned some respect, then it is possible to say, no, I want to tell this story, and they can trust you to say, okay, let's go with it.
Can I interrupt you a little bit?
Yeah.
When you earn respect, then they trust your decisions about what stories to tell.
Yeah.
Now, are they no longer paying attention to the audience demand and paying more attention to the trust that you have earned? And that's the.
So with respect and trust, they are willing to try new things, and they are willing to take the risk to say, oh, let's tell, again, another perfect example. So we're doing a show called DJ, some of you know the show, and originally when the show was written, it was a pure whodunit. There was no African element, all that stuff. And I remember when it was a fight, because they were like, no, why do you want to put African jazz? No, we know that this is the story that works, and I fought to that to keep that element in there. They abused me small shot, but no problem. But when the show came out and people could relate to the show, I got an email from somebody, I don't know that show, to say thank you very much for sticking to your guns because it worked. Now it was a risk. Now they took the risk because this guy has done some stuff, and if it didn't work, maybe they would have blacklisted me. I don't know, but but it's more like, okay, we trust you. Yes, we're willing to take the risk because we can hold, you know, it's like when your kid is riding a bicycle. For the first time, you don't want him to ride the bicycle, but you see him, you give him training wheels, after a while, he will fall, he will break his head, but you're better off than you were when he was 2.
Okay, thanks for your insight. Ike, do you want to chime in on that question as well?
Honestly, I totally agree with what he said. I think the key thing there is that filmmaking is a collaborative art, actually. I think it's one of the most collaborative art forms you can actually find, in the sense that it's literally impossible for one person to make a film, you know? So somehow, as a film artist, you have to come with that mind that sometimes you have to let go of certain ideas that you hold very dear to your heart. Because at the end of the day, you have to, like, it's just an idea. Like a moment ago, you didn't have it as an idea, and now you have it, and why are you holding it so strong? You know what I mean? Except if it's a conversation around a cause that you feel very strongly about as a person. You know, say somebody wants to make a film, and they're telling you that you have to have, like, say, LGBT element in it, for instance, and your personal convictions does not agree with, you know, going with that narrative. At that point, yeah, definitely, you know, it would be great to walk away. But if it's about, you know, structures, you know, what kind of stories and stuff like that, I mean, I think that every film artist should be, like, you know, kind of like have an open mind when you approach projects, basically.
Okay, thank you. I think here, I'm interested in knowing your thoughts on this.
Right. For me, I think if someone is going to give you their money, come on now. Come on. But not to say you'll do something, exactly what he said. If you don't believe in something, then don't do it. It's not by force. If you don't make this film today, you'll make the other tomorrow. There's no money hanging around. There's no free money anywhere. So if someone is going to trust you with their money and they say, this is the process that has worked, it's even better for you if you have someone to hold your hand, to guide you. There's some people who did not have those opportunities where they've lost a lot of money and they've learned along the way. So if a platform is saying, we'll give you this amount of money, bring your creative input, of course you will have your boundaries, but you also have to be flexible because it's their money, it's not yours.
Okay. Can I just interject a bit here?
Yeah.
On this question of he who pays the piper, I'm trying to get at something here, which is, we're talking about films that reinforce negative stereotypes about Africans. And that's what my organization is concerned about. And how we reverse, how we shift the needle on that subject and get filmmakers to have some sense of obligation and responsibility and understand the power that they control and how that power can be put to use in terms of shaping the image of the continent. And so my question right now, while you were speaking, is around if all those who control the resources want you to tell stories that reinforce stereotypes about Africa, diseases, poverty, poor leadership, conflict, right? If that's what they want, and they control the platforms, they control the resources, they control the reward system, where's the place of a filmmaker, and how much of a tussle, how much of a tension is it for a filmmaker to stand their ground and say, you know what, I've looked across, there is a pattern. They all want me to tell certain types of stories, but I want to be able to influence that decision and push out this kind of content. I mean, do you have a chance at all in doing that? That's what I want to get out of.
Okay, so I'll go back to your organization and your focus on new narratives about Africa, positive storytelling. You're not going to fund something that does not align with that, will you? No, exactly my point. So as a filmmaker, if I decide that I do not want to be part of storytelling that promotes negative stereotypes of Africa, it's my choice, it's my decision. I have the free will to decide. Not everyone is going to have those opportunities to say no. They may feel they're desperate. But it really depends on you as a storyteller and what you want to identify with. As an actress, I've had many scripts come my way and I don't believe in them and I don't take them. I don't take those roles. Maybe I may have taken one. In fact, there's some things I've seen that it has propelled other people's careers and I'm like, should I have taken that? But I made a decision that I do not want to identify with a certain topic. So I will not do it. And we all have the free will to choose where we want to align with.
Just to add, the concluding part of the story that I said before about this guy who spoke to me. Yeah. You know, after we had that conversation, you know, I'm sure he was like, hey, whatever. But to answer your question, he went ahead and did his thing himself. He did it himself. Like, he didn't wait for somebody to say, oh, I have the money, or we have the data, we don't have the data. He's like, okay, no problem. He went ahead and did it himself. And the good thing about that is that when you look at it, and I mean, we all have our convictions. Yeah, you know, maybe this isn't going to work or whatever, but you go ahead, you do it, and I'll change my mind tomorrow. Again, he's done his thing, he's made his point. And whoever sees his points tomorrow and says, oh, I'd like to invest in that, great stuff. So if you get to a point where you're trying to say something and somebody's like, no, I have this money, this is the story you must tell, no problem. Uncle Charles, please give me money, I want to make a film. End of. Uncle Charles, I'm paying you.
Oh yes, Charles, don't get right in front of us. Thank you. Beverly, do you want to chime in on that before we move on to the next one?
No, I totally agree. I think for me, the way I am, of course, I'm still like, I mean, there's veterans here, but I'm still quite new to this space, but it's a space that I'm really passionate about, and where I stand right now is, I know the kind of stories I want to tell, I know how I want to show up as a producer, and I'm ETC, so I'm going to control that narrative and do exactly what I want and then sell it to you. It's just a conversation. You want it? Great. You don't want it? There's someone else who will. That's literally how I see it.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
I just to say, like, you know, everything is, the industry has moved from a very, like, it's a long journey, like, from where we started, right? And there used to be a lot of gatekeeping, but now it's literally, like, no gatekeeping if you know what you're doing, you know? So I don't think this should be an issue for any filmmaker who really feels strongly about whatever kind of narrative they want to pursue. Like, you can literally take your smartphone and make a film and distribute it on YouTube and find your audience across the world. You know, it's as simple as that. So you don't have to, like, stress about, you know, whether who pays the piper or whatever. If you don't like what the piper is playing, you walk away and you create your own symphony. It's very simple.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. Useful. My next question is really around, and it still borders on partly what you have been talking about the past 20 minutes or so, which is around how African filmmakers, or Nigerian filmmakers first, we're at Africa right now, and there's a predominance of Nigerian filmmakers here, so I would like to use that as a case study. Do you think there's sufficient awareness about how their films impact narratives about the continent? I've traveled a lot of times when I travel for business. I get in touch with people and they always tell me, oh, when I encounter stereotypical comments about Africa, and sometimes I choose to dig deeper. And when I dig, I sometimes realize that the perceptions that they have came out of the scripts, right? I was speaking to a group of young people at a session put together by United Nations in Abuja some time ago. And I asked the people if they had a chance of coming back to life, what country would they love to come back as a citizen of? And your guess is as good as mine. You know, they all said they would love to be US citizens. So I was kind of curious. I kind of knew what the answer was going to be before I asked. So I wanted to know why. And one of the young chaps was brave enough, and he stood up and told me, sir, if I'm a US citizen, wherever I find myself in the world, if I get into trouble, the American president will send not the Jets. What was this special force? Special forces. Marines, yeah, the Marines, the naval seals, and all those guys. And they will send them to come and rescue him. And he was so sure, I could see there. He was so confident of what he was saying. He didn't believe it was film. He felt, look, this is the real stuff, And it just made me understand how, Bollywood, right, has contributed to how we perceive America. You feel like you can't commit a crime and go free. There must be consequences. People will get you. So, and that aroused the curiosity in me about how aware our filmmakers are about the power of the films that they make. Are they sufficiently, do you think, in your opinion, that filmmakers are sufficiently aware that they may be promoting or damaging the continent through the content that they put out? I'll start with you, Beverly, because I can see you raising the mic.
I actually wanted to ask you a question. No, so I wanted to get an example, or get examples of, like what you feel portrays Nigeria in a negative light. I think that I would love to start there.
Well, we did the research not too long ago, and our research showed that there were 5 frames through which stories are told that all culminate into negative portrayal of the African continent. And those 5 frames are poverty, diseases, corruption, poor leadership, and conflict. And
but then I feel like for me personally, from filming obviously, I feel like it's true to where we are and who we are as Nigerians as it stands. I feel like we have to also acknowledge the fact that Nigeria, unfortunately, is the poorest country in Africa right now. And I feel like the more we're honest about our stories, I mean, it's the poorest and the richest country in Africa. And I feel like the more we're true and honest about our stories, the more we can,
Okay, so it's a thing of being honest about the reality.
Yeah, being honest about the reality of things. I feel like how America portrays their country literally is true to what they believe in, which is the American dream. As it stands, we don't have the Nigerian dream yet. And I feel like, yeah.
Okay, so I just landed that point. This is really for me to this conversation.
Yeah, for me, I really feel like we need to be authentic with our stories. I feel like, personally, Hollywood has their films, and I feel like when it comes to Nollywood, like the more we try to compete with what they have, the more it it just makes us seem as though, I mean, I can't do it. No, I'll get back to it. Let me get my thoughts in first.
Okay.
I do want to say something. I don't think, personally, I don't really, and please correct me if I'm wrong, guys. I don't think that people look at Nigeria. I don't think people have been, they have a poor perception of Nigeria through films. I don't think so. I think that people have a poor perception of Nigeria because of the things that other people are doing outside of film. I promise you, I've had conversations with people who live in Kenya. If Aki and Popo come down from the plane in Kenya, they will block the road. Do you understand? What people know of Nigeria is we are rich, because in the films, they see Lekki Koyi, one guy will come with his Range Rover, toast this babe, spray her money. That's what they know. And in fact, I don't think that, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, if there's any film that has really shown abject poverty in Underbridge, it's either your poverty is village poverty. So for them, no, I'm serious, for them the dream is you were living in the village, and this is for those who watch old Hollywood movies. You were living in the village. One guy came from Lagos, you married the guy, then you went to the city. So for people outside, that's the Nigerian dream. Moving from the village to Lagos. And think about it. Look at guys like Timaya. Look at guys like all the Nigerian artists that you know. What is their story? I was selling plantain in the village. I came to Lagos and I've made it. Is it not? The last panel session we had, what's his name? Kenneth Young and Alpha. Living in Jos, I moved to Lagos 2 years ago. Do you get it? So I personally don't think that that's the case. I think that even in recent times, that the films that we've put out are a true reflection of what is happening here. Perfect example. Again, I would mention this film because I liked it. I'm not trying to patronize him or whatever. Black Dog, for instance. Now, when we make films and you see, so there's this guy, they killed his son, he was a bad guy, used to work in the army and whatever, and he's doing all these fight scenes and X, Y, Z. I'm watching the film and I'm like, so we have these kind of bad guys in this country. It makes me feel good. It makes me feel like, this is how, this place can be. It makes me feel like when they are saying, oh, one, upload something to the internet because we want to betray this guy. Oh, we can do it. Instead of them pressing Nokia phone and saying, go and catch the guy, how far? So, our films have started getting us to a point where we're beginning to believe in the Nigerian system. So, unfortunately, I may have to disagree. That's me. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree with you. The research we did was not focusing on Nigeria, but it was on African things. Yeah, and then sometimes when you use just Nollywood as your barometer, you might get misled because Nollywood is very, very, very advanced in comparison to what we have in some other countries on the continent. So it was a general thing. But just hold your thoughts, Mikael. Let us take Ikia's thoughts, and then we will come back to you.
Right. So for negative stereotypes and all, yes. A lot of people, filmmakers, storytellers want to tell what is in their locality, what they see, and they try to be as truthful as possible. Africa has a lot of these issues, but on the flip side, we have a lot of good coming out of Africa. And the fact that we're all in this room today is a reflection of what is good about Nigeria, what is good about Africa. Because the journey of filmmakers is a very isolated journey, and you see a filmmaker from a corner of Nigeria and his work is being consumed somewhere in Australia. That is a success story. A lot of times people talk about America, and yes, the soft power of storytelling is very, very moving and can connect with people. So I don't think people should stop telling the truth about their locality, but at the same time, as filmmakers, we have a responsibility to also highlight what works, what is good. So I think, like we just talked about Patoranking and Timaya, where are their stories in our storytelling? So those are things that I feel we can begin to speak about through the work that we put out.
Thank you. It deserves a round of applause. Okay, we're almost out of time. I know you're itching to say something. I'm going to ask my last question, and I'll start with you. Then you can respond to this question and then take that last question. Is that fine, Mikael? All right. My last question is very simple. What do you think storytellers, filmmakers need in order to fulfill some of the expectations of representing Africa better? What do you think filmmakers need? Is it skills? Is it funding? Is it more consciousness and awareness? What do you think is their number one need? You can start with your response to the last question and then take this question.
So there's a global play for African stories right now. And like I've always said to people, I said, this is the time we need to start empowering filmmakers with the right resources to tell the right stories. Stories that will, tell a different, tell who we truly are in terms of promoting the cultural values, of Africa and its environment. A lot of factors need to be looked at. One, a lot of people who think Africans do not have a story to tell that would show who we truly are not correct. Just like what Beverly said, I totally disagree. Because over the years I've had the opportunity to screen African films outside. I've had one-on-one conversations and communications and seeing the response and reactions from audiences. Now, a lot of people believe that Nigeria and Africa is so powerful, but we're not taking advantage of what we have. So we need to start empowering our people with several things. One, beyond funding, we need to help empower people with, development skills. There's a guy called Elas Rivers in South Africa, the Readers Institute, who organizes the training for writers. You know, I think we need to create more opportunities, more residency programs for writers, so that they really understand how to tell our stories. You know, a lot of people want to impress the Western audience, but impressing the Western audience is not trying to tell Hollywood their own story. You know, you need to tell our own story, because that is what made Knowledge, for example, very popular. If you go around the world and say, oh, I like the stories that people tell. I've seen your fufu, I've seen your amala, I've seen this. You know, the food culture, the dress culture is becoming so rich. The Afrobeat, watch the movies these days, you see. You know, the soundtracks, most of the popular movies these days, they need to get an African or a Nigerian artist to perform the soundtrack, because they want a bit of our culture, you know, interwoven in their films. So we need to also understand that funding is very important, but what kind of funding? Like what you guys are doing, beyond counter funding and loans, we need to also create soft grants for filmmakers, so that it's not about soft grants for them to make films, but their processes to make films. Script development is one, because for you to have a great film, you must have a good script. Without a good script, you will not do all your best. At the end of the day, what is the product that you're selling? So we need to also create more, you know, platforms like this, like Africa, where people can network, where they get to share cultures from other African countries. I've had the opportunity to see a lot of films in Africa, and I can tell you that we don't make terrible films like even people in South Africa. The crime films you watch in South Africa will make you imagine that South Africa is not the kind of place you want to live in. But you go to South Africa and you feel relaxed. And you know, the stories that are told around South Africa is not about South Africa being the most dangerous place. So film is not the reason why people see Nigerians differently. The people who are not in film, people who are in politics were corrupt. People who are in other sectors were corrupt. Now, Nollywood, coincidentally, is the only sector that is studied in so many universities abroad. I don't know about any other sector that's been studied, but Mr. Charles Novia can, at least you can testify that there are several universities that have talked about Nollywood. There's been several programs discussed, there's been several papers, you know, delivered on Nollywood. I don't know if there's any paper delivered on the Nigerian petroleum sector or the Nigerian agriculture sector. So this, the first industry that has actually globalized Nigeria is our film industry. That is why the Ministry of Foreign Affairs have given instruction to all the embassies around the world to say, you know what, ensure that you show Nollywood films in your embassies. If Nollywood films are not giving us, you know, the good reputation, they will not want to show Nollywood films. Same with South African films, same with Congo, films from Congo, from Cameroon. Right now, a lot of platforms are coming inwards to Africa. The reason they're doing this is because they feel that the African story can actually generate the kind of income they want. We have the audience. Look at the films that Hollywood have made over the years. A lot of the films about Africa. Even the Wakanda Forever, Black Panther Wakanda, it's about Africa. They're trying to do Mansa Musa now. It's an African story. So we need to take, you know, charge of our industry and begin to recreate ourselves and create a sustainable industry for us. Because if we don't do that, the West will take advantage of it. And because they have the resources, we have the resources, but we don't think it's the best place to put the resources. I remember when people invested over $9 million, if I'm not mistaken, for half of a yellow sun. A lot of the people invested those monies are people who probably now should realize that Nollywood started making a lot of impact. They should come back to the industry. But they were discouraged. They were not discouraged because the industry did not recreate itself and generate those income, but because the handling, the management of those funds were in the wrong hands. If you do proper management, because I'm interested more in the business of film, you know, I believe that every filmmaker should do a good film, should make money, should live well. You know, we cannot make films and end up as paupers. Yes. We have the resources, we have the artistry, we have, you know, the platforms. If we, you know, collectively work together, including the structures that we put in place. The problem also is that we do not have enough information, because if we have information, we would not complain about financing. there's a co-production or official agreement between Nigeria and South Africa, am I correct? It means that if you work with a South African filmmaker, you are able to access funding from South Africa. Now let me tell you another interesting thing. We can create a triangle. South Africa has a co-production agreement with France. Nigeria currently has a co-production agreement with France. It means we can access monies from South Africa and France and then counter funding from Nigeria and make the kind of films we want to make without having to go to people who give us instructions on how to make the films we want to make. So let's do more research, understand the industry, and it makes it easy for us to make the kind of films we want to make.
Almost out of time. I was going to take more responses to that, but I would love to open the floor for questions, perhaps 1 or 2 questions only. We can afford to take just 2 questions, and then we'll wrap up.
So while they're taking the mic, can I quickly say something? No, I think that what is important for me, like crafting local stories for international audience and all that. The positive thing is, can I go on?
Yeah.
Okay. I think that creating awareness is the key thing. Like, who are you as a filmmaker? Like, if you haven't found yourself and like literally find your voice, right? You need to have a voice for you to even know what narratives you're pushing, right? And we are all like victims of colonialism and all of that. And a lot of the films we make are just like regurgitations of these colonial, legacies, right? Mindsets. So I would say it's very important that everybody needs to approach decolonization as a filmmaker, approach it as a cause. Like, take it as a very serious thing to get out of the way, to sort yourself out personally, so you know what stories you're telling and what stories you should not be telling. And it's not about telling stories about poverty. You can actually tell a story about poverty in a very, it's a perspective. If you're telling a story of poverty and you're showing hope and how people are fighting through, that's beautiful. So it's not about whether you're telling stories about poverty or whether you're mimicking what is in the society or not. It's also, after you've discovered yourself, that's when you discover whether, are you the kind of person that want to perpetuate the status quo, or do you want to see a change? Because if you're telling the story as a mirror of what it is, it means you want to continue to recreate what is already happening. But if you have a different vision of the future, then you can take elements from what is happening and you can reimagine it.
Thank you so much.
So, the guy who I spoke about, who I can do his own thing, is right here.
Who is that guy? He's the serious guy we've been hearing about.
He went and did his own thing.
Okay, shout out to you. Congratulations. Congratulations. We've got opportunity for just 2 questions, please. The first question here, and I can't see who the second person is. Okay, so this is a guy, so let's take a lady. Okay, please, sir. Can you go ahead with your question?
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Chimela Wachiku. Ike has kind of, almost answered the question I was about to ask. It's about this negative portrayal of Africa. Do we tell stories about the things we see around us, or do we give hope? Do we, like what James was saying about someone saying the American president will send Navy SEALs to come and get him out of wherever he was an American? That's something that Hollywood has portrayed. It's an idea that they've sown, a seed that they've sown into the minds of people. So do we, our police force, do we keep showing police stations? No, but it's true. Do we keep showing police stations that are decrepit and run down, and officers are doing all sorts? Or do we give hope? Do we say, okay, this is what Nigerian police force can be, and then let people know what it's about?
All right, thank you. Last question from there, but who wants to respond to this question?
I'm happy to.
You just dropped the mic now. You just dropped the mic now. Okay, be here.
I think hope is very important in storytelling. I strongly believe that. And when we say the police is bad, not all aspects of the police is bad. If the police go on strike today, you don't want to be in Nigeria. And I've actually had experiences where I've seen the police come through for people and solve crimes. So I think, if you imagine a society without police, you don't want to experience what that is. It's unimaginable. So I'm not saying that it's a perfect situation, but there is some good. And I think as storytellers, we have a responsibility to always portray hope in any stories, because there is no life without hope.
Alright, thank you so much, thank you so much. The last question up there.
Yes, so please just permit me to say this. I feel that a lot of the conversations we're having is not about Nollywood painting Nigeria black, because Nollywood is really doing Nigeria a great deal of favor with the work we do, but I think it's about using film as a tool. I'm very passionate about film as a tool for social change. I think it's the aspect of reprogramming it. Now, if we look at us as our works, rather than telling of most of our ladies that are side chick, most of our ladies who use their bonbon and all this for you, what about talking about the university that creates stuff that is global? In other words, we could still create similar kind of content, but the programming of those stuff leads not just the people. Like she said, the word is hope. I think that's one thing that lacks in some of our films have it, but a lot of the films we create, you realize that if you're talking about Nani sacrifice. Thank you, Nani sacrifice. So a lot of people look at it from that perspective that an evil man who makes money to some point looks like there was this period it was like sacrifice. I'm not saying all of our films do that, but I'm saying we can start intentionally creating films that will look at creating hope. Now, another aspect of this thing is that we talked about America. Yeah, the little child that talks about coming to redeem me because I'm an American is because the mind. Sorry, sir. It's because the mind has been programmed to think that way. So when we understand the power of film, we also know that the content we create has the power to reprogram people's mind. So let's use film. Yeah, Nigerian police is bad, but we can use film to reprogram minds and also reprogram the police to be good.
Thank you. Unfortunately, I wish we could take more questions. Unfortunately, we can't take any more questions. We can't continue further. And that does it for us, ladies and gentlemen. I would really like to appreciate you all for taking your time to listen to us. I couldn't have asked for a better panel than this, so a round of applause to everybody on stage. Thank you so much, thank you. And I will just leave you with one final thought, ladies and gentlemen. African No Filter supports storytellers, filmmakers, and we do this for filmmakers at the finishing stages of their film, right? And we do between $5,000 and $15,000. It's a small amount of money, and because of that, we channel those funds purely to the post-production processes of filmmaking, not the script development or all the other parts, but just the post-production. So please do very well for yourself by checking out those opportunities on our website, africanofilter.org, africanofilter.org. Thank you so much.
The last two sessions for the day we hold at Soul Beach, Navida Pavilion and Soul Beach. So everyone is advised to just fly down here. There are buses that will take you to Soul Beach, right, for the last two sessions on French Embassy and the other one. Then from tomorrow, every other panel session we hold at Soul Beach. Please. Pavilion at Soul Beach. Can we all just move down? There's a bus waiting for us at the car park area to take everyone. There's BBC road, all the big service road here in this place. But now, all the panel sessions, industry sessions, we hold at Soul Beach. Thank you so much.